Hey guys, so we're going to start off our probability and data collection unit today. And we're going to start looking at factors that affect data collection. So there's a whole bunch of different influencing factors. Where's my pen here? A whole bunch of different influencing factors. We're going to look at a whole bunch of them, talk about what they are and how they can affect data collection. Before we hop into this new unit, though, I just want to talk a little bit about why it's important. So if you look at the news, if you are looking through data, if people are telling you things that are facts, all of these things are coming from information. Somebody has gone out and collected this data somewhere. They've talked to people, they've looked at numbers, they've done something to actually gather data. They've collected it. Now, if they don't do a good job collecting this data, their numbers might not really reflect the truth. And some people go out of their way to use numbers to tell lies. So you can see, we'll look at later on in this unit at some examples of actual news companies publishing numbers and graphs and quote unquote facts that are not actually true. Now, their numbers aren't wrong, but the way they collected the numbers was wrong. And because the collection method was wrong, the numbers aren't accurate, they don't reflect things properly, and so the information you're getting is false. So the first influencing factor you got to watch out for is bias. So when you're collecting data from a sample, there's a whole bunch of different factors that can affect your results, which we say that those results are then biased. They're skewed one way or the other. Bias occurs when every member of the population you talk to is believing in a certain thing. Now, sometimes it's really, really obvious, right? If you were to go to, I don't know, like a gun club meeting or something and ask people what they think about firearm safety. Well, that's going to be a biased result. Obviously, they all have a certain set of beliefs because they're all part of a gun club. They all believe a certain thing, right? But what most people don't realize is that bias is everywhere in everything. You are biased, I am biased, everything you see is biased, just based on how we've been raised. All of us, well, the majority of us, I think, have been raised mostly in Canada. Canada has its own set of values that are very different from if you were to go to the Middle East or Europe or China or even the US, right? We believe in different things than other countries do. Which means if you're asking people and those people are only from Canada, your results have been biased a little bit. You're going to get certain results that reflect Canadian values. The fact that you guys all go to school out here in Niverville, you're probably all living rurally or in the country, that biases you a certain way. Living in the country, growing up rurally, gives you a different perspective and a different set of values and beliefs than growing up in a city will, surrounded by all kinds of traffic and pollution and seeing different issues in different places. So everyone is biased. The trick is, can you recognize your bias and avoid it? Anyway, let's look at an example here. We got some guy, student number 1, Jordan. He wants to survey students at school. He wants to find out if the cafeteria should change its menu or not. And so he's got 2 plans. 1, he's just going to ask how much students in his class. Plan 2, assign each student in the school a number and then have a computer just randomly select students from the entire school to be interviewed. So the question is, which would be better for eliminating bias? So which of these is more likely to result in a population or a sample where everyone believes the same thing? And so I would suggest number 1 is a bad idea. If you only ask the students in your class, what is the problem with that? Well, if they're in your class, they're all in the same grade. They're all likely in the same subject, depending on what grade he's in. Like if he's taking, pre-cal versus essential math versus chemistry versus drama, those people all have certain things in common with each other if they're in certain classes that they've selected, right? So if you're only asking people in your class, you're getting the same age group, you're getting likely the same interests, you're getting people that are probably friends with each other in a lot of cases. You've got friend groups in the same classes. So you've got a lot of things that could bias those results. If you assign everyone in the school a number and just have a computer randomly generate it, well, I'm going to be getting some grade 9s, some 10s, some 11s and 12s. Randomly, I should be getting some guys and some girls. I should be getting people in all different courses. It should be like everybody's individual bias should sort of balance out and give us a better representation of the whole school. So number 2 would probably be a much better bet in terms of eliminating bias from this data. Other things that can cause bias would be the use of language. Is the question presented in such a way that people actually understand what is being asked and that it's not tilted or slanted one way or another? So an example of this could be if I wrote a survey question that says, Mr. Burns is the greatest math teacher. That's my opening statement. Now my question, which math teacher should we bring chocolate to? So there it is. There's my survey question. Mr. Burns is the greatest math teacher. Which math teacher should we bring chocolate to? Now, I had an opening statement describing some of what was going on, which is very common in surveys, giving some context. But the context here is misleading. Not misleading. I mean, I think I'm the greatest math teacher. You may disagree. But the fact that that's written into the survey question is going to change this answer. If you tell people who aren't super familiar with the math teachers in the building this question, they're going to be much more likely to vote for me as the teacher we should bring chocolate to, right? Just because their use of language has biased it a little bit. If you use really, really big, complicated words in a lot of your questions, well, people might not understand what's being asked. You might be biasing it in that only people with big vocabularies would understand the question. If you are missing some information in this little intro sentence, they might not know what is being asked or what you're looking for. I had a question. There was like a business class, I think they did surveys or something, and I answered one of these surveys one at a time, and the question said, would you support my business? That was the question. The problem was, there was no intro saying what the business was. I don't know what your business is. How am I supposed to support your business? I don't know what you do. So make sure the question has enough information that you can actually make things clear, and make sure that information doesn't tilt your perspective one way or another. Second one we can look at here is ethics. Does the question you're asking refer to inappropriate behavior? So, or this could be like socially inappropriate, it could be legally inappropriate, whatever it is. If you are asking about people's like drug use, for example, which is for like considered illegal and kind of immoral and socially looked down on, if you're asking about this, people are likely going to lie on your survey. Even if it is confidential and you say that, people likely won't tell you the truth, which means your information isn't much use. Might it have something to, so yeah, drug use. If you're in high school, stuff like alcohol use would be hard to get good data for because high school students know they're not supposed to be drinking, and so they won't tell people this. So like drugs, alcohol, sexual activity, anything like that that is kind of considered inappropriate socially, legally, morally, whatever that conundrum is. If you're talking about that, it's going to be very difficult to get good data. So talking about stuff that is not ethical in one way or another can cause bias in your results. So you want to be careful to make sure you're not asking about things that are unethical. Cost. Does the cost of the study outweigh the benefits? Okay, I've got this burning question, guys. It's really important that I know who prefers Coke, who prefers Pepsi, right? Like I need to know this. I'm going to have a party. I'm going to buy some Coke or some Pepsi. I don't know which. I don't want to buy both. So I need to figure out what Canadians in general enjoy, because I'm going to invite people from all over the country to my party. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to print out 36 million surveys. That's the word. 36 million surveys. And then I'm going to stamp them and mail them to everyone in Canada. That way, when they all write back, I'll have to make sure that my mailing is prepaid, so they don't have to pay to send me back results. Otherwise, I might not get as much stuff, right? So I'll mail them out. I'll have prepaid responses. They'll send me back 36 million, and then I'll know exactly what % of people enjoy Coke versus Pepsi. Great plan, right? I'd have the most accurate data probably in all of Canada on Coke versus Pepsi. Does the cost of doing this outweigh the benefits? Absolutely not. In no universe does spending, well, let's say conservatively $2 per envelope, so spending $72 million to answer this question, it's just not worth it in any way, shape, or form. So you got to make sure that the study you're planning, the way you're gathering information, is cost effective. If you're making a decision about a building, for example, like you want to build the rec center next door, right? That's going to cost millions and millions of dollars. If you're going to spend $10,000 or $15,000 doing a survey, that sounds like a lot of money, but it's probably worth it compared to the cost of the project. If I'm just hosting a party and I want to know who likes Coke or Pepsi, that is very close to valueless. So spending $72 million to figure that out, not worth it. Another thing that can hugely affect your results is the timing and location of where you actually do this survey or where you collect your data. So does the time the data was collected influence the results? Is the timing appropriate? And is the location of the survey introducing bias? So let's say, for example, you were talking about vacation preference. So do you like to go someplace hot and tropical? Do you like to go maybe like to Europe? Would you rather go see Yukon or something a little bit colder? The answers will likely differ if you ask in summer when it's super hot outside versus winter, right? If you're asking this question to people in the winter, you're going to get a lot more people that want tropical vacations. If you're asking in the summer, a lot more people might say, hey, maybe I'd go overseas to Europe and travel, or maybe I'll go up north and check out the Yukon. Nobody wants to go up north in the winter. It's not going to happen. So that's kind of an example of timing. When you ask your question can change your results. You want to get rid of that bias, you would have to ask that question all year long. You'd have to do a batch in the summer, in the spring, in the winter, in the fall, in order to specifically eliminate that bias. An example of location is, I need to know your favorite sports team. This is very important. I need to know what Winnipeggers prefer for sports. So I head downtown and I stand outside the MTS Center and I ask people right after a Jets game, who's their favorite sports team? And what do you think my results are going to be? Yeah, they're going to like the Jets, right? So not only is the timing after the Jets game, but also the location at the MTS Center. If I was asking, I don't know, somewhere else, if I was asking around Niverville after a Jets game, it wouldn't make a big difference. Actually, it might still make a difference because most of the hardcore Jets fans wouldn't be around. They'd be in the city watching the game, right? So, but location makes a big difference. If I want to ask questions about, hey, what would you guys prefer? Do you guys prefer golfing or curling? And I ask this question on the golf course, I'm going to have a seriously biased. Now, these are extreme examples, like very obvious ones, but you'd be surprised how often people will do stuff like that. A company might hire you to say, hey, we need data on if people prefer golf courses or curling clubs. And, you know, off the record, we want it to be the golf club. Go gather some information for us. Well, you can easily skew your results to make sure the golf club is the answer, or golf club or golf course is the answer. So these are examples of how people could do stuff like that, using timing and location to collect their data. Another thing that can affect your results is privacy. Do people have the right to refuse to answer, and are their responses kept confidential? Now, right to refuse to answer, almost always the answer will be yes, they have the right to refuse. The only time you don't would be if it's government sponsored. So if the government of Canada puts out something, they might say, everyone needs to answer this. We need this data for certain reasons. Like the census is an example of that. They put a census out and everyone is supposed to answer the census. And that gives them data about who you are, how much money you're making, male or female, how many people in your household. And the idea is that they can see how many people are in each town, which towns are growing, who do they need to give more money to, where do they need to buy roads, where might they need to build hospitals and fire halls. So they need that information, so they actually make it illegal to not answer stuff like that. But if you were just to pose a question, of course people have the right to refuse to answer. Are the responses kept confidential? That means private. So if you put your name on this, is the name going to be taken off the data later on? Are you not going to ask for a name at all? Are people's results going to be private? Now, this is a much bigger deal if you are trying to gather information for something that is a little more in that morally gray area, right? You want to try to ask people about drug use, for example. You're going to want to make sure your results are private. Because if you say, no, we're going to share your name and drug use with the police, well, you're never going to get valuable data, right? You would have to keep that stuff confidential. Now, are you allowed to keep that stuff confidential is another question. It depends on the field you're in or the branch you're in. So generally try to avoid that stuff, but it's a lot of red tape and bureaucracy to actually research stuff like that, which makes it difficult. But keeping responses confidential would be part of that. And you probably see that in if you've ever filled out some surveys. A lot of times they say, "Hey, whatever you say here, your response will be confidential." It means they're not going to link your name or your account or a number that shows who you are to your answers in any way, shape, or form. And that comes into how you design your survey. Whether it's private or not can affect how people answer and therefore bias your data. Another one here is cultural sensitivities. Might the question offend people from different cultural groups? Now, this is a bit of a tricky one. It takes a little bit of life experience to kind of get used to, but there are all kinds of things from across the world that different cultural groups find offensive that you might not even know about. For example, in France, if you do like the peace sign, but do it backwards, that's considered a real nasty insult, like giving the middle finger to somebody. There's a bunch of historical reasons why that is, but most people would be like, "Hey, yeah, peace, cool." And then somebody wants to come up and punch them. Same thing has to be considered with questions, right? If you're asking certain questions about certain things, that might offend people from different cultural groups, right? You have to assume that if you're doing a good job of your survey, it's going to get out to all kinds of people, because you don't want bias. You don't want to be asking a certain type of people if you want to get a good group, a good information, a good solid set of data without bias. So you're going to be asking people from all kinds of different cultural backgrounds, all kinds of ages, all kinds of races, all kinds of sexual orientations. So you want to make sure that all these different groups are considered and you're not going to be offensive to them. Because if you are offensive to some people, they might not answer. And if they don't answer, guess what? You've just biased your results. You've lost the input of a certain group of people. So that's something you're going to want to avoid. So here we go. Activity, we're going to do 4 of these together. For each situation, help identify influencing factors and then explain your reasoning. So, number 1, we'll call this one 1. A sales representative stands in front of a display of different kinds of toothpaste. All right, cool. So we're looking at toothpaste. He asks every person buying toothpaste the following question: what is your favorite brand of toothpaste? For what reasons? All right. Sales representative stands in front of a display of different kinds of toothpaste. He's asking every person buying toothpaste the following question: what is your favorite brand of toothpaste and for what reasons? So what would we have here for influencing factors? Well, there's kind of a time and location thing, right? He's asking every person buying toothpaste. So he's only asking toothpaste shoppers, people that are currently at the store buying toothpaste. So if you think about who are toothpaste shoppers, how often have you bought your own toothpaste? Well, probably never, right? And so what you're ending up with is the moms and dads, whoever are doing the shopping, they're the only ones with input on this. So if they all like Crest because it's cheap, well, that's a little different than you guys who maybe you like a different brand because it comes in bubblegum flavor. I don't know. But what their favorite brand of toothpaste is might not be the same as everyone else's. So you are only getting the opinions of, I'm going to call that person the family shopper, whoever is shopping for the family. Because they are asking at the store in front of the literal display case. You're also only getting the impression of people who are currently buying toothpaste. Like maybe they have something in their mind. Maybe they're in the toothpaste aisle because they saw an ad or something like that, right? So you got to be a little careful there. But you're only getting the opinions of the family shopper if you ask at the store. So you're probably missing out on younger people because they're not shopping for toothpaste. Who else might be marginalized by shopping for toothpaste? That's a good question. I don't know. Are there any cultural groups that don't brush teeth? I don't know. Maybe. I know there are cultural groups out there that don't believe in wearing deodorant. I've come into contact with some of them. And that's just a thing that happens. But, I mean, if you're asking a deodorant question instead of toothpaste, those people would not be shopping for deodorant, so you're never going to get the opinion of, oh, deodorant's not important. You're going to miss that entire opinion. All right, let's head on number 2. Free samples of sunscreen sent home every fall and winter. Or sent to every home, in fall and winter. The mail reply card asks people if they would use the product again. Okay, now, this one's not too hard. Sunscreen. When do you wear sunscreen? Do you wear it all fall and all winter? I know I don't. I can't remember the last time I had sunscreen on. Well, I can. It was last summer sometime. Not only that, you've got a mail reply card. Who cares enough about sunscreen to fill out a mail reply card? So, two big ones here. You've got timing. No one uses sunscreen in fall and winter. So they're not even going to use the sample because you're sending it at the worst possible time. And even if they did, two, you've got, what would we call this? Right to refuse. How many people, that's not how you spell, how many people will actually write back? You know what? We can add a third one to this. The cost. You're sending lots of samples and mail. Now, I don't know the answer to this question yet, but is it worth it? Is it worth? Who knows? So you got three reasons why this is a real bad one here. Free samples of sunscreen sent home to every fall and winter, mail card. So no one's using sunscreen fall and winter. People won't likely respond to this. And even if they did, what is it costing you to send out free samples to every house in the fall and the winter? That's crazy. Number 3 here, we got a grocery store employee. He's conducting a telephone survey of everyone who lives within 10 kilometers of the store. So he wants anyone in 10K. Now, he's trying to figure out what meat products to sell, so she asks, what type of red meat do people prefer? There we go. All right, what type of red meat people prefer? That's probably not actually a quote, but, well, we'll roll with it for now. So, a couple of things. You got location, right? You're only within 10K. Now, I don't know if you have much experience with this, but generally speaking, people tend to live in clusters with people like them. Now, it's not always true, but there's a reason why most cities have like Little Italy and Chinatown and places like that. So if you're only within 10 kilometers of your store, you might be only getting a certain cultural demographic. You might be introducing bias that way because you might be missing, like if Little Italy doesn't fall within your 10-kilometer radius, you're missing a lot of Italian Canadians, assuming this is taking place in Canada. And so they might have a certain preference for meat, right? Italian sausage, I'm assuming. I don't know, actually. But being within 10 kilometers might give you some bias for location. But probably the biggest one, what's that called? What's the exact word again? Go back here really quick. Not privacy, time and location. Use of language. That's what it's called. Their use of language. They asked red meat. That's a huge problem. Because red meat implies beef, or I guess lamb. What is not included? Chicken, pork, turkey, all kinds of good stuff. So because they asked what type of red meat do they prefer, she's not actually determining what meat products people want. She's only determining what cuts of beef or lamb should she sell. So she's asked the wrong question with her use of language, so she's going to get the wrong answer. So if you word something slightly off, what type of red meat people prefer, suddenly you're not answering the question you set out to answer. Last one here. Sales representative conducts a telephone survey. As she poses the question, a person receiving the call says, "I'm not interested, thank you." And so the sales representative responds, "Why not? Your input provides useful information," and starts repeating the survey question. Now this goes back to the whole privacy/right to refuse, right? This person clearly is not interested in doing the survey. Now, do they have the right to refuse? Yeah, she can hang up and there's no repercussions to that. But let's say that this salesperson's pressure, why not? This is useful, and keeps going. Let's say it keeps her on the line. For some reason, she doesn't hang up. how accurate are her responses likely to be? Does she want to be there? Does she want to be answering these questions? Does she care about what they're talking about? Not at all. So if people feel, I'm going to call it forced, coerced might be a better word, they feel forced to do a survey, their data gets worse. They're not going to think about their answers. They're not going to care about their answers. Yep, sure. Yep, that's me. Yep, check the box. Why not? Okay, next. Am I done yet? No? Okay. Answer yes to the next 4. Sweet. Now I'm done. Done. Hang up. So you got to be careful with if people do not have the right to refuse. If you're trying to make everyone take your survey, people that don't want to will say whatever they want because they don't care, which means your data is now biased and not as useful. Oh, I got a couple extra ones. Look at that. I thought I had 4. I got 6. Lucky day. Can never go wrong with more examples. So 5 schools under construction. It's really dirty, really dusty. Surveys conducted about the environmental health of your school. The survey is done every 4 years. So every 4 years, they survey your school, ask how healthy things are. They happen to be doing it while you are under construction, and everything is dusty and dirty. What do you think people will say about the environmental health, right? So this is just straight up timing. Just wait. Wait until the school's back to normal. And then try again, and you'll have much less biased examples. So dust and dirt would make people think it's less healthy. And I mean, they're not wrong. In this particular case, it probably is less healthy, but that's not how the school normally is, right? It's less healthy for like a few weeks while they do get their construction done, right? It's just the way it works. And so if they were to wait till their school was normal, and again, they survey every 4 years, they can wait a couple months to do the survey, then you'd have a much better idea of what the general population, the general idea actually thought about the environmental health of that building. All right, I think this is the last one. Yeah. So a sales representative sets up an online survey. They offer a free MP3 file, woohoo, that was downloaded from the internet to everyone who completes the survey. The company has not bought the rights to the song. So what are you running into here? Obviously, ethics, right? A, you're only surveying, people are only going to answer this if they want to have a free stolen song, but B, they're doing something illegal, which means if they get found out, they get in a bunch of trouble, and their data is going to be all probably confiscated or not be allowed to use it. So that's going to screw up not only their data, well, their business, but also there are people out there that feel very strongly about pirating things, and they will refuse to do it. So you will get no results. You won't get results from anti-piracy people, which means your data is now biased. You have lost a section of the population who don't believe in pirating. So because of what you're offering, you have kind of screwed yourself out of a group of people. So that's all we've got for today's lesson. There'll be a worksheet posted shortly where you can kind of show me what you know about this stuff. But if you got any questions, you know where to find me.